Comparing data in Excel is a frequent need, and on the Formulas tab in the ribbon, you'll see a category of functions called Lookup and Reference. The two most important functions in this category are called VLOOKUP, you see it at the bottom. V means vertical, its companion function, HLOOKUP, H means horizontal. When you're looking up information, it's not uncommon to want to compare data with a table. And tables sometimes are in the same worksheet as the data you're trying to compare them with, or sometimes in different worksheets, even in different workbooks. In this workbook called Lookups, we want to come up with a tax rate in column K for the salaries in column J. If you didn't know about lookup functions, you'd be tempted to try an if function, but it would become very unwieldy very fast. We'd have to have multiple nested ifs. It would take quite a long time. When you're looking up information in a table could be structured vertically, like what we see here, in which case we will use a VLOOKUP function. A table could be structured horizontally, like the one to the right. If you look at these two tables side by side, you see that they do contain exactly the same information. So if you were designing a table to look up tax rates, would you use the one on the left or the one on the right? I think most people would use the one on the left because it's just more compact on the Excel screen, just fits on the screen better. There might be cases where you inherit a worksheet from someone else. Some lookup functions are already being used, and maybe they are using this table. You'll probably go with the flow and continue to use that table. But if you're designing it on your own, you're probably more likely to use a vertical table. Based on the two examples, and with no other knowledge about tables, you might think that they are always either two columns or two rows. But off to the right here is a different situation, one that we'll see a bit later in a different worksheet, where the table has many columns and many rows. So there are quite a few answers in this particular table, at least potential answers. So tables can be of varying sizes. And wherever possible, when you're setting up tables, it's likely to be easier if the table's in the same worksheet. Now, sometimes you might want to move them later, that's fine. And sometimes you must use tables in different workbooks, worksheets, and that's just the way it's going to be. So in column K here, whether we use VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, we'll essentially be using the same kind of mechanism. The other thing that we need to say about these two lookup functions is that sometimes they're based on looking up information in an approximate way. In other words, here, we're trying to find this value, 61,760, in the left column of this table, or possibly the top row of the other table. But do we really expect to find that value here? Well, theoretically, it's possible. But this list only contains breakpoint type numbers. And so when you're looking up values of a certain type, like here, we use a VLOOKUP in a manner for what's appropriate for an approximate match. At other times, if we're trying to compare an ID number or someone's name with a list, it has to be an exact match. Can you imagine somebody, for example, looking up a social security number and saying, well, close enough is good enough? That's not going to be good enough. So sometimes when we use lookup functions, we're concerned with them being an exact match, and sometimes not. But as we've seen in this particular worksheet here, we might be using a vertical table or a horizontal table, or in other cases, possibly much larger tables to look up information from. And these VLOOKUP functions and HLOOKUP functions certainly are going to be a much better result. And these lookup functions, both horizontal and vertical, are going to get the job done much, much faster than using unwieldy if functions.